Chapter 5. The Abyss Stirs. A new path emerges. The sky above was streaked with the fading light of twilight, casting an eerie glow over the ruined temple. The battle had ended, but the silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The once booming clash of flames and shadows had given way to a hollow stillness that seemed to echo louder than any roar. I stood there, gazing at the crumbling remnants of the abyssal temple, my body still humming with the adrenaline of the fight. My muscles ached, bruised from the intensity of the battle with Malachar. Yet there was something deeper, something unsettling that gnawed at me. I had won, yes. Malachar was defeated, and the abyssal corruption had been cleansed, or so it seemed. But the system message I received just moments ago rang in my mind. The abyssal seal was cracked. That meant something remained out there, a force even darker than Malachar, lurking in the shadows. Lyra stood beside me, her gaze locked on the distant horizon, as if she, too, could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. I could see the worry in her eyes, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. We both knew that this victory wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a longer story. A system notification popped up before my eyes, breaking the silence. Final battle complete. Malachar defeated. Abyssal corruption cleansed. Ignis core mastery, 100% achieved. Level up, LV 60, LV 65. Level 65. I should have felt like a champion. I should have felt like the world's strongest warrior, having defeated a dark force and brought an end to the greatest threat the realm had ever known. But I didn't. Instead, all I could feel was the weight of the final line in that notification. The abyssal seal was cracked. The darkness wasn't gone. It was only hiding, waiting for the right moment to rise again. Leo, Lyra's voice broke through my thoughts. She placed a hand gently on my shoulder, her touch warm, comforting. What happens now? I met her gaze, the uncertainty in my heart mirroring the doubt in her eyes. I should have had an answer. I should have been able to tell her that the battle was won, that everything would be fine now. But I couldn't. I didn't know. The path I had walked, the one I thought would lead to victory, to fulfillment, had shifted. The victory I had imagined, where I stood tall and triumphant, felt hollow. The world wasn't saved. Not yet. Something still stirred, deep within the cracks of the abyssal seal. I clenched my fists, the fire of determination flaring within me. I don't know, Lyra, I said, my voice steady but filled with resolve. But I won't stop here. I had come too far, fought too hard, to simply walk away. The abyss had been defeated. Yes, but its remnants remained. And until I uncovered the truth, I couldn't rest. A final system notification appeared in front of me, its words both a challenge and a warning. New quest unlocked. The Abyss Stirs. Objective: uncover the truth behind the abyssal seal. Status: unknown entity observing. Reward. I smirked, the familiar rush of excitement and anticipation flooding through me. Looks like my journey isn't over. The quest had been unlocked, and it was just the beginning of a far darker path. But I had no intention of backing down. Lyra turned to me, her lips curling into a confident smile. The firelight from the dying embers of the temple reflected in her eyes, making them sparkle like twin stars. Then let's keep going. With her at my side and Ignis perched on my shoulder, his fiery gaze locked on the horizon, we turned away from the ruins of the temple. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I would find the truth behind the abyss, whatever it took, into the unknown. The journey from the ruins was long and arduous. The world seemed to be holding its breath, as though it, too, was aware that something far darker than the abyss itself was stirring beneath the surface. The sun had set by the time we left the temple, casting the land in an eerie twilight. We traveled in silence, only the sound of our footsteps and the occasional flutter of Ignis's wings breaking the stillness. As we moved through the landscape, Lyra spoke of her past, the deep secret she had buried for so long. She shared stories of her time as part of the abyssal cult, how she had once sought to wield the abyss's power for herself before fleeing in fear. She admitted that her knowledge of the abyss, both the light and the dark, was vast, but even she didn't know what lay beyond the seal. The cult believed that the abyss wasn't just a dark force. It was a force of change, she explained quietly. They saw it as a path to true power. But I couldn't follow that path. I couldn't lose myself to that kind of darkness. Her words hung in the air as we continued our trek, the weight of them pressing down on me. Was I following the same path now? The temptation to use a heart of fire, to bond to the dragons of old, to wield the unimaginable power at my fingertips. It was all too tempting. But the deeper I went, the more I realized that the abyss had always been about control, about using power to shape the world in your image. Leo, do you ever wonder if we're walking the same path as the abyss? Lyra's voice broke through my thoughts. I didn't have an answer to that. I wasn't sure where this path would lead. But I knew one thing. I couldn't back down now. A strange presence. As we neared the edge of the kingdom, strange occurrences began to happen. We were passing through a forest when I first felt it. A faint, cold presence, like a shadow lingering at the edges of my vision. Ignis, too, seemed on edge, his flames flickering erratically. I spun around, searching the woods, but there was nothing, only trees, an eerie quiet that had settled in around us. Did you feel that? I asked, my voice low. Lyra nodded. I've been sensing something for a while now. A presence. Something ancient. Something watching us. The air seemed to grow colder, and the trees around us swayed, even though there was no wind. I could feel the weight of something unseen pressing down on us. The sense of being watched was overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever this presence was, it was not of this world. We're not alone, I muttered, my hand instinctively reaching for the hilt of my sword. The unseen foe. That night, as we made camp under the cover of the trees, the presence grew stronger. My sleep was restless, filled with strange dreams, visions of an endless black void, swirling with shadow and fire. I saw figures in the distance, distant shapes that seemed to beckon me toward them, only for the darkness to close in before I could reach them. When I awoke, the air was thick with tension. I felt a sharp sting at the back of my neck, an instinctive warning that something was terribly wrong. Lyra, too, was awake, her hand on her sword, her expression one of quiet alert. "We need to move," she whispered. We packed our things quickly, the urgency in her tone adding to the dread I felt. As we began to leave, I turned back for one last glance at the campfire. It flickered and sputtered, then went out completely, plunging us into darkness. And then, from the shadows, I saw it. A figure emerged from the forest, a tall, cloaked being with glowing eyes. Its presence radiated an oppressive power, and I knew instantly that this was no ordinary foe. Lyra drew her sword, but I stopped her with a raised hand. The being wasn't attacking. Yet, it simply stood there, watching us with those glowing eyes, as if waiting for something. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the fear creeping up my spine. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it slowly reached out, its hand crackling with dark energy. A message flickered across my system screen. Entity identified. The Watcher of the Abyss. Warning. Unseen enemy detected. I had no idea what this entity was, but one thing was clear. We were no longer dealing with just the Abyss. The true darkness had begun to awaken. A decision must be made. The Watcher of the Abyss stood before us, its power palpable. This was no random enemy. It had been sent, and it was here to test us. "Lyra," I said, my voice low, "we have to face this. Whatever this is, it's tied to the Abyss. We can't run." She nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then let's end this. Together." I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing for certain. The Abyss wasn't over. The fight had just begun. Chapter 6. The Watcher's Challenge. The Silent Gaze. The Watcher's glowing eyes pierced the darkness, its presence overwhelming. I could feel the weight of its gaze, like an oppressive force pushing down on me, making it hard to breathe. Lyra and I stood firm, both of us unwilling to back down, though I could sense her hesitation in the way she gripped her sword. For a moment, there was silence. The only sound was the crackling of the fire that had now completely extinguished, leaving us alone in a thick, suffocating darkness. The figure didn't move, yet I could feel its energy swirling around us, making the air feel heavy with anticipation. It didn't take long for my system to recognize the entity before us. Entity detected. Watcher of the Abyss. Warning. Entity not known to system. Warning. Entity may possess vast power. Status. Hostile intent detected. This was no ordinary foe. Whatever the Watcher was, it was tied to the very fabric of the Abyss itself. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what was happening. The Abyss had cracked, yes, but now it seemed that this creature, this Watcher, had been waiting for something, waiting for me. Who are you? I demanded again, my voice stronger this time, though it shook slightly. What do you want from us? The Watcher tilted its head slightly, its form seemingly shifting in the darkness, as if it were made of shadows and smoke. Its presence radiated power, vast, unfathomable power that felt ancient and otherworldly. The air itself seemed to tremble with its every movement. It did not speak. Instead, its hand, cloaked in a black mist, extended toward me, and I felt a sharp tug on my chest, like a part of me was being pulled into its grasp. My instinct screamed at me to step back, but before I could react, the Watcher's voice, deep like 1,000 whispers in my mind, reached me. You are the one, the flame bearer, the one who will either bind the Abyss or set it free. I froze. What do you mean? I asked, but the Watcher didn't respond directly. Instead, it seemed to smile, though its face remained obscured by the shadows. The Abyss has been sealed for millennia, but even now it stirs. The cracks are deep, and you have already awoken something far darker than you know. I felt a shiver run down my spine. It knew what I had done, the battle with Malachar, the crack in the abyssal seal. It was all connected. But there is more, the Watcher continued. The question is not whether you can defeat it. The question is whether you can control it. You are bound to the fire, but the fire is not your only power. The Abyss flows within you, too, Leo. It always has. My heart skipped a beat at the revelation. The Abyss flowed within me. I had always thought of myself as a fire-bearer. Ignis, my dragon, my core, my strength. But now, this new information made the ground beneath me feel unstable. Was I truly the hero of this story? Or was I walking toward my own downfall? Lyra stepped forward, her expression defiant. You speak in riddles, Watcher. What do you want from us? The Watcher's gaze flickered toward her, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of recognition in its eyes. Then it looked back at me. You must prove your strength, it said, its voice growing colder. The Abyss cannot be undone with mere flames. The darkness you seek to destroy is both within you and around you. You will face trials, Leo, tests that will push you to the limits of your strength. Only then will you know whether you can truly seal the Abyss or whether you will become its next vessel. My pulse quickened. I had already faced countless battles, monsters, and horrors. But this challenge was something else entirely. I had been fighting for control over my power, for mastery over the fire. But now, it seemed that power alone would not be enough. What kind of trials? I asked, my voice steady despite the rising fear in my chest. The Watcher raised one long, shadowy hand, and the ground beneath us shifted. Suddenly, the darkness around us seemed to grow deeper, colder, as if the world itself had become a reflection of the Abyss. You will know soon enough, the Watcher said cryptically. The first trial begins now. Before I could react, the ground split open, and I was pulled downward into a pit of blackness. Lyra cried out in alarm, but I could no longer see her. My body fell, and for a long moment I was weightless, plunging through an endless void. The fire and the shadow. When I finally landed, I found myself in an unfamiliar place, one that felt as though it existed beyond the normal boundaries of reality. The air was thick, oppressive, and the ground beneath me was cold, made of smooth, obsidian stone that seemed to absorb the light around it. A cold wind swept through the vast, dark expanse, carrying with it the scent of something decaying. I was alone. At least, that's how it seemed at first. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the void, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was another person, but not like anyone I had ever seen before. They were tall, their skin dark as night, with fiery eyes that glowed with the same intensity as Ignis's flames. Their presence felt like a direct contradiction to the warmth I carried within me. The figure spoke, their voice like a deep growl, reverberating through the stone. I am the Shadowborn, the first trial of the Abyss. You will face me, Leo, and only by defeating me will you prove your worth. My heart pounded in my chest. This was the first trial? I had no choice but to fight. Lyra's words echoed in my mind. The fire isn't your only power. This was a test of more than just my strength. It was a test of my very soul, a trial that would challenge me confront not only the abyss, but the darkness within myself. Let's begin. The first trial, the Shadowborn. The Shadowborn lunged toward me with incredible speed, its movements like smoke, impossible to track. I reacted instinctively, drawing my sword and summoning the power of Ignis. Flames erupted from the blade, lighting up the dark surroundings. But the Shadowborn was fast, faster than any opponent I had ever faced. It twisted around me, its form flickering in and out of existence, leaving only the faintest shadow behind. I swung my sword, but it passed through the figure as though it were nothing more than a mirage. You are slow, the Shadowborn taunted, its voice echoing like a whisper in the wind. I gritted my teeth, narrowing my eyes. This wasn't a normal fight. I wasn't just battling an enemy. I was fighting the very essence of darkness. My flames felt like a poor weapon against such an opponent, yet I couldn't stop. With a growl, I channeled the full extent of my power. Ignis's flames surged around me, hotter and brighter than ever before. The Shadowborn leaped at me again, but this time I was ready. I swung my sword with all the strength I had, the flames trailing in a trail of blinding light. This time, the blow landed. The Shadowborn screamed as the fire seared through its body, but it didn't vanish. It reformed, the shadow swirling back into place. Impressive, it hissed, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty in its fiery eyes. But you will need more than fire to defeat me. The true trial is not about power. It is about control, unveiling the darkness within. As I stood, breathing heavily from the intensity of the fight, I realized something. The Shadowborn wasn't just a foe I had to defeat. It was a mirror of my own struggle. The darkness within me was not just a physical force. It was a part of my being, a part of my essence. And I could feel it pulling at me, testing my resolve. Control, I murmured to myself, remembering the Watcher's words. It was true. The power of the fire alone would not be enough. To defeat the abyss, I had to master my own darkness. I had to find a balance between the flame and the shadow within me. With a deep breath, I steadied myself. Let's finish this. The battle had only just begun. Chapter 7, The Heart of the Abyss. The Echoing Void. The Shadowborn vanished into the darkness, leaving nothing behind but the stillness of the void. The air around me grew thick, and for a moment, I thought I had failed, that I was trapped in this nightmarish place forever. But then, as if summoned by my own thoughts, a low rumble echoed through the stone beneath my feet. You have passed the first trial, Leo. A voice intoned, deep and resonant, like 1,000 whispers layered on top of each other. But the journey does not end here. I looked around, but the figure of the Shadowborn was gone. The cold wind swept through the cavern, making the shadows around me seem to shift and twitch as though they were alive. My system flickered, showing me another message. Trial 1 complete. Shadowborn defeated. Reward. Shadow Flame passive ability. Warning. Second trial approaching. The fire within me sparked to life once more, but this time it felt different. The Shadow Flame was not like the normal fire I controlled. It was darker, more volatile, as if it had been born from the abyss itself. It thrummed in my chest, but it didn't feel like an ally. It felt like a part of me that I didn't understand, a dangerous power that could either aid me or consume me. I shook off the feeling, trying to focus. The voice was right. The journey wasn't over. I had passed one test, but I knew the next one would be even harder. The abyss was testing me, probing for my weaknesses, and I couldn't afford to fail. What is this place? I called out into the void. Where am I? For a moment, there was nothing but silence. But then, the ground rumbled again and the shadows around me shifted. They coalesced into a new form, an enormous figure with glowing red eyes that burned with intensity like that of Ignis's flames. The creature's massive wings unfurled from its back, casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the entire cavern. The figure stepped forward, and I recognized it immediately. It was an incarnation of darkness itself, the very embodiment of the abyss's corruption. "You are in the heart of the abyss," the creature rumbled, its voice low and menacing. "And you, Leo, are about to face the second trial, the trial of the heart." I didn't flinch. I had faced monsters, creatures, and battles that seemed impossible. But this was different. This creature wasn't just a physical opponent. It was something much worse, a manifestation of my deepest fears. "The heart?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What does that mean?" The creature laughed, a dark, hollow sound that echoed around the chamber. "The heart is where all things are born. The fire, the shadow, the abyss itself. It is where your true strength lies, and where your greatest weakness is hidden." A chill ran down my spine. I had no idea what it meant, but I could already feel the gravity of this trial. The darkness around me seemed to close in, pressing against my chest. The air grew colder, and my breath came in short gasps. "What is it you fear, Leo?" the creature asked, its voice like the hiss of 1,000 serpents. "What is it that haunts you in the depths of your soul?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I had faced the flames, the fire, the monsters, but fear? That was something else. Something I had always tried to ignore, buried deep inside, facing the abyss within. The creature's eyes bored into me, and I felt something stir within my chest. A swirling, dark energy. My own fears, my own doubts, my own insecurities. The fire I controlled suddenly felt distant, like it was nothing more than a flicker against the overwhelming darkness that now threatened to swallow me whole. I staggered back, my heart pounding in my chest. "No, I won't let you control me." But the creature only smiled. "You misunderstand, Leo. I am not here to control you. I am here to show you who you truly are." The ground beneath me shifted, and suddenly, images began to flash before my eyes, memories, fragments of my past. My childhood, my family, the people I had lost, my failures, my doubts, the moments where I had questioned my worth. "Do you see it?" the creature asked. "The weakness that lies within you, the shadow that you cannot escape. You are not just a fire bearer, Leo. You are the flame and the darkness combined." My knees buckled, and I fell to the ground, clutching my head as the memories swirled around me, overwhelming my senses. The fire inside me burned hot, but the darkness was colder than anything I had ever known. The creature's voice echoed in my mind, tormenting me. "You are afraid of the darkness. You fear what it will do to you. You fear that one day it will consume you. But the truth, Leo, is that the darkness is already within you, and it will never leave." I screamed, trying to fight back, but the darkness only tightened its grip on me. My vision blurred, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see. The fire within me was fading, swallowed by the shadow, breaking the chains. In the depths of the darkness, a small flicker of light appeared, a tiny flame, struggling to stay alight. It was Ignis. I could feel her presence, faint but steady, like a distant call. Lo, Ignis's voice echoed in my mind, clear and warm. "You are more than just fire. You are both light and darkness, but neither can exist without the other." I reached for the flame, focusing all my energy on it, willing it to grow. The fire surged, pushing back the darkness. But it wasn't enough. I had to face the truth. The darkness wasn't just a force outside of me. It was part of me, and it always would be. "I am not just fire," I whispered to myself. "I am both." I stood up, my body shaking with effort, and raised my hands to the sky. The darkness roared around me, but this time I didn't back down. I embraced it. My fear, my doubts, everything that had held me back. I channeled it, allowed it to become part of my power. The shadow flame flickered to life once more, but this time it didn't feel foreign. It felt like it belonged. The darkness and fire fused together in perfect harmony, burning brighter than ever before. "You are not just a fire," Ignis's voice said again, stronger this time. "You are the flame and the shadow combined. Together, You are unstoppable. With one final roar, I unleashed both the fire and the shadow, watching as they intertwined, burning away the darkness that surrounded me. The creature let out a deafening scream, but it was no match for the combined force of my power. It crumbled into dust, its form fading into nothingness. The path ahead, the heart of the abyss faded, and I found myself back in the cavern. The shadows lifted, and the air grew warmer. The second trial was complete, but I knew this victory had been different from all the others. It wasn't just about defeating a foe. It was about overcoming the darkness within myself. The system flickered again. Trial 2 complete. Heart of the abyss defeated. Reward: Shadow Flame Mastery, active ability. Warning: third trial approaching. I took a deep breath and steadied myself. The trials were getting harder, but I wasn't alone. I had Ignis, and now I had control over both the fire and the shadow within me. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready. Chapter 8. The Abyss Reveals Itself. A world on the edge. The days blurred together as I wandered to the cavern, each step heavier than the last. The second trial had shaken me to my core, forcing me to confront the darkness within. But even now I could feel it, like a shadow hanging over me, waiting to pounce. I had always known the abyss was a force beyond my understanding, but after the trial, I realized it wasn't just a physical entity. It was a part of the world, a force that had existed since the dawn of time. I had conquered the first 2 trials, but I knew that the final one would be unlike anything I had faced before. The system had warned me about the third trial, but it didn't tell me what to expect. The abyss, in all its terrifying might, was not just an enemy. It was a force that sought to twist everything, to break the very essence of existence. The abyss doesn't just corrupt, it rewrites. I whispered to myself as I looked at the darkening sky above. The fire inside me flickered weakly in response, almost as if it was afraid of what was to come. Lyra had been quiet for the past few days. Her thoughts her own. I hadn't asked her about what happened in the second trial, nor had she offered an explanation. But I knew, like me, she was preparing for the inevitable. The final trial awaited, and we both had to face it. I glanced over at her, her gaze distant, as if she was trying to unravel a mystery that had eluded her for far too long. I could see the remnants of the darkness in her eyes, the mark of the abyss still faintly glowing beneath her skin. Lyra had always been my anchor, the person who kept me grounded, but even she wasn't immune to the corruption. "Leo," she said softly, breaking the silence, "do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? What if the abyss isn't the enemy at all? What if it's just a part of this world that we don't understand?" I shook my head, unable to fully grasp her words. The abyss is a disease, Lyra. It's not just some misunderstood force. It corrupts everything it touches, twists it until there's nothing left. She didn't argue, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. The truth was, the more I faced the abyss, the more I realized that its true nature wasn't just about destruction. It was about manipulation. It didn't just want to consume. It wanted to reshape the world in its image. The call of the abyss. The final trial approached like a storm on the horizon, its presence heavy in the air. The system pinged once again, and I read the new message, my heart pounding. New quest unlocked. The abyss reveals itself. Objective: confront the heart of the abyss and uncover the truth about your existence. Status: unknown entity approaching. Reward: warning: final trial ahead. I clenched my fists, feeling a mixture of excitement and dread. This was it, the end game. The abyss was coming for me, and I wasn't sure I was ready, but I had no choice. This was the path I had chosen, and I would face it head on. The sky above me darkened, clouds swirling in unnatural patterns, as if the world itself was being torn apart. The winds howled, carrying with them the scent of smoke and ashes. And then a deep rumble echoed through the ground beneath me. "Leo," a voice, faint but unmistakable, called to me. I turned sharply, but there was nothing there. The voice was inside my head, not outside. It was familiar, yet foreign, and it sent a shiver down my spine. "Do you remember, Leo?" The voice whispered. "Do you remember why you were chosen? Do you remember the true nature of the abyss?" I tried to shake it off, but the words lingered in my mind, twisting like a knife. I had never questioned why the system had chosen me, why I had been given the power of the Ignis core. But now, in this moment of uncertainty, I wondered if I had been wrong all along. Into the abyss. The ground trembled as the cavern around me began to collapse, revealing a dark chasm below. It was as if the abyss itself had opened up beneath my feet, ready to consume everything in its path. Without thinking, I jumped, plunging into the dark void below. The wind rushed past me, cold and sharp, but the fire inside me burned brighter with each passing second. As I fell deeper, the abyss surrounded me, its whispers growing louder, more insistent. The voices of the fallen, the echoes of those who had succumbed to the darkness, filled my ears. "You cannot escape it," they taunted. "The abyss is not just a force, Leo. It is your birthright. It is the truth you have been running from." I gritted my teeth, trying to block out their words. This wasn't the truth I wanted to hear. I wasn't some vessel for the abyss. I was the Fireborn, the one chosen to wield the power of Ignis, the one who would stop the abyss from consuming the world. I finally hit the ground hard, the impact rattling my bones. I rolled to my feet, but as I did, a new figure emerged in the shadows, its silhouette barely visible in the darkness. It stepped forward, and the air around it crackled with energy. The figure was cloaked in shadows, its face hidden beneath a hood, but I could feel its presence, its power. This was no mere servant of the abyss. This was something far more dangerous. "You have made it this far, Leo," the figure said, its voice chillingly familiar. "But now you must face the truth." The hooded figure lowered its head, and for the first time, I saw its face, a mirror image of my own. The same eyes, the same features, the same mark on the skin. It was me, or rather, it was the part of me that had been consumed by the abyss, the shadow that had been lurking within all along. The truth unveiled. The figure stepped closer, and the darkness seemed to bend around it, as though it was drawn to its very being. It raised a hand, and suddenly I was flooded with memories of a time before the system, before Ignis, before the world I knew. I saw a younger version of myself, standing in a ruined city, watching as the abyss consumed everything around me. I saw my own eyes filled with fear, with doubt, as I stood powerless against the storm. And then I saw the moment the system had chosen me, the moment I had been bound to Ignis. But it wasn't just a choice. It was a trap, a design to use my power, to turn me into a weapon. "You are not the savior of this world, Leo," the figure said softly, its voice like a dagger to my heart. "You are its destroyer. The abyss was never meant to be sealed. It was meant to be awakened." I staggered back, the truth of its words crashing down on me. "No," I gasped. "That's not true. I'm here to stop it, to save the world." The figure smiled, a twisted expression that mirrored my own. "You were always a part of it, Leo. The abyss chose you because you were the key to its rebirth. The fire inside you was never just fire. It was a first spark of the abyss itself. Embracing the abyss." I stood frozen, my mind reeling, my heart racing. The final trial wasn't just a battle against an external force. It was a battle against myself. The abyss hadn't just corrupted me. It had shaped me, molded me into the very thing I feared. "No," I whispered again, barely able to speak. The figure stepped forward, extending its hand toward me. "Embrace your true nature. Leo, the abyss is you, and you are the abyss."